LoveLore Library. Chapter 192. They're too ugly. I don't want them. His tone was flat. He retracted his gaze and leaned back lazily. Not to mention that the smiles of the 8 beauties froze on their faces, the expressions of the other people present also cracked a little. Everyone knew that these women were only palace maids in name. Whether they could really only be palace maids or not, they could only be palace maids in the end. In essence, they were just bed warmers. Even if it was not the emperor, it was still a noble prince. Naturally, they were all carefully selected. Otherwise, if they failed to win the emperor's favor, they would be accused of being disrespectful. In terms of color, they might be more outstanding than a regular talent show. After all, this was Qi Yuan casting a net from top to bottom. The scope was much wider than a talent show. How could they be ugly? I think they are all very beautiful. How are they ugly? Since father thinks they are beautiful, then take them all. Li Hongyuan said lightly. Bastard, the people your mother chose for you are simply, because mother prepared them for me. Father, you have some scruples. Originally, you still wanted to take them all. This time, Lu Qingdi directly picked up a cup and smashed it. The person who was smashed didn't blush, but the others were scared half to death, especially those who saw this scene for the first time. As the saying went, when the emperor was angry, although the current situation was not to the point of millions of corpses, it was still absolutely frightening. They all panicked and shrank like quails. How could they be in the mood to show their beauty? Li Hongyuan frowned and flicked a few drops of water that splashed on his body. Father, your temper is getting more and more irritable. If you have excessive internal heat because of the hot weather, you should ask the imperial physician to prescribe some medicine to reduce internal heat. If you throw things randomly and I don't avoid them, won't I be disfigured? I have a foundation in martial arts and my hands and feet are quite agile. I can basically avoid them. What if you accidentally hit someone else, such as mother? What should I do? Lu Qingdi was easily angered by Li Hongyuan. Now, he didn't want to scold him anymore. He just wanted to beat him. However, this evil creature wouldn't stand there obediently like the others. If you really ordered him to kneel down, he would do it. At that time, he wouldn't be able to do it. However, if he didn't vent his anger, he would panic and want to take something and hit him. Your Majesty, noble consort Su hurriedly reached out to stop him. Calm down. You know Yuan's temper, but it's just as Yuan said, if you don't dodge and get hurt, you'll be the one to feel the heartache. In the end, Lu Qingdi didn't throw it again. Noble consort Su looked at Li Hongyuan again and felt helpless. Her son didn't pay much attention to other people, so why did he like to quarrel with his imperial father? Can't you stop making your imperial father angry? Li Hongyuan glanced at Lu Qingdi and curled the corners of his mouth. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed particularly sarcastic. To ordinary people, this was a provocation, not to mention that the other party was the emperor. However, after the provocative gaze, it was followed by noble consort Su's pleading gaze. In the end, Lu Qingdi endured it and looked away. Out of sight, out of mind. Yuan, if you continue to be like this, go outside and kneel. Noble consort Su said rather sternly, but there was helplessness in her eyes. She signaled Li Hongyuan to control his temper and stop before going too far. Don't really annoy your imperial father. Li Hongyuan lowered his head slightly and lowered his eyes. He seemed to have obeyed noble consort Su's words and looked bored. Noble consort Su chuckled and returned to the 8 beautiful women. Imperial mother also thinks that they're pretty. Yuan, tell me, which part of them are ugly? If you can really say 1, 2, 3, Imperial Mother won't force you. If you can't, then it won't be as simple as just picking 2 people. Noble consort Sue's expression indicated that she wanted him to take all of them back. Their skin is rough and dark, their legs are short, and their waists are hard. Their faces are covered with such a thick layer of powder that even the spots can be seen. After washing their faces, won't they just look like a ghost? I don't know what kind of inferior incense they use on their bodies, but it's so thick that it stinks. This sun really doesn't know which part is good and which part is beautiful. Li Hongyuan said without the slightest trace of politeness. The 8 women, who had always been quite confident and satisfied with their external conditions, bit their lips at this moment, and tears welled up in their eyes. How could they feel wrong to be belittled like this? Noble consort Su was speechless. If you're so picky, then there probably aren't any beauties in the world. Which part is rough? Which part is dark? They're clearly all soft and tender. They're standing perfectly fine, so how can you tell that their waists are hard? Their legs are short. Noble consort Su glanced at them. Not all of them are short. Most people have spots on their faces, so it's normal to use powder to cover them up. How many women don't use powder? If you don't like this incense, then you can just change it to something you like. You're purely nitpicking, so it doesn't count. This sun's requirements aren't high. Their skin should be like cream, whiter than snow, and even without makeup, they should still be outstanding and flawless. Their waists should be flexible but not fragile, and their legs should be slender and straight. They shouldn't use any incense on their bodies, and their sweat should also have a pleasant fragrance. Imperial Mother, this sun isn't being picky, but this sun really can't do it with women like this. To put it bluntly, he was talking about Jingwan. If Jingwan wasn't like this now and had gone through a lot of hardships, he would probably say something else. Even if her skin was dark and rough, he could still say that she was wild and beautiful. How could this be called not high requirements? Could it be that all the women who served you in the past were of this standard? If that was the case, why didn't others notice it and let him take all of them? Don't think that her son was the only one who forcefully snatched women. It was just that the others weren't as serious and were overshadowed by his light. When I'm interested, I can naturally lower my standards. When he wasn't interested, he didn't want them if they didn't meet his standards. All right. Don't talk about this with Imperial Mother. If you don't want them, then forget it. Can Imperial Mother force you to do something like this? Noble consort Su waved her hand impatiently. It's this son's fault. I've troubled Imperial Mother. Li Hongyuan said rather apologetically. Noble consort Su was startled. You child, this isn't what Imperial Mother meant. Imperial Mother hasn't done anything yet, but you're already thinking too much. You're a grown man, but you're acting like a little girl now. She was helpless and amused. Li Hongyuan smiled. This son knows that Imperial Mother treats this son well and has always remembered it. It's just that this son has no way to repay you and even makes Imperial Mother sad from time to time. What are you saying? The more you say, the more inappropriate you become. Noble consort Su smiled, but turned her head and used a handkerchief to wipe the corners of her eyes. If you really feel this way, then will you listen to Imperial Mother for everything in the future? Li Hongyuan had never been a person who played with warmth. Just because he didn't play with it, the damage he caused when he did it once in a while was absolutely unprecedented. In the blink of an eye, he made Noble consort Su cry, made Lu Qingdi soften into a mess, and made Princess Min Xiang's fear of him decrease sharply. The 8 women who had been humiliated by him couldn't help but steal glances at him. As for Li Hongming, he was a person who didn't see eye to eye. This kind of warmth would probably only intensify his disgust. However, these people, what did they have to do with him? Li Hongyuan shook his head. This son is used to messing around. I'm afraid I can't listen to anyone. So, Imperial Mother, this son is very sorry. If there's a next life, silly child, you don't need to say anything. Imperial Mother knows. Noble Consort Su warmly said. Li Hongyuan smiled faintly. If there's a next life, it probably won't have anything to do with you. Maybe I'll cripple your son early on. Even if you're in a high position, I'll pull you down and trample you into the mud. I just don't know if the you at that time will still be a loving mother like you are now. The 8 women who had been degraded by Li Hongyuan naturally couldn't stay in Luqingdi's harem. Li Hongming also wouldn't want them. Those who cared about face probably wouldn't reach out their hands again. Let's ask, other people looked down on you, yet you pulled them back. Do you want to be ridiculed, or do you want people to say that you have no taste? Of course, there were those who didn't take it seriously and didn't hesitate to express that their standards weren't as high as Jin Qinhuang's. After the 8 women were taken away, they couldn't hold it in anymore and cried their hearts out. Where was the arrogance and complacency that they had when they were first selected by Noble Consort Su? Because they climbed high, they fell miserably. Although they were only 1 step higher than the others, it was enough to make the other women double the mockery. Who told you to be high and mighty, flaunting your prowess? Who told you to humiliate me? That was double the hatred. If you don't take revenge now, when will you? This joke was naturally quickly known by others. Everyone's reactions were different. Although the final result made many people satisfied, after all, the remaining women probably wouldn't be easily provoked. But it also made many people feel that it was really worthy of Su Shi's unfailing favor. They thought that she was used to consolidate favor, but in the end, she was chosen for her son. According to Luqingdi's favor towards Jin Qinhuang, Luqingdi naturally wouldn't object to choosing people for him. Perhaps, he would be very happy. Noble Consort Su let Jin Qinhuang stir up the situation again, so basically, it was the same as overturning a boat with a pole. This woman really wasn't sinister and treacherous. She effortlessly dealt with the potential enemy. On the other hand, Qin Shufei only smiled faintly after hearing this. She said softly, everyone says that he is the most unrestrained and unrestrained. Who would have thought that he is actually the most infatuated and loyal? I really want to see how far he can go after they get married. Whether Luo Sangunyang is blessed or not, we will see when the time comes. Nyang Nyang, please forgive this servant. This servant didn't hear what you said clearly. Can you say it again? The palace servant asked for forgiveness. Qin Shufei's temperament was good and her position was high enough. In the inner palace, she didn't fight or snatch. Although she wasn't as favored as Noble Consort Su, she wasn't considered bad. In the entire inner palace, there was probably no one who lived more comfortably than her. Because of this, the people who served her were more relaxed than other places and were slightly more daring. If it was another person, they wouldn't dare to say such words. Qin Shufei waved her hand, it's nothing. Ben Gong was just talking to herself. That's right, go invite Princess Gong Qin over. In any case, she was her niece. She should warn her a few more times and not be incited by others to do things that she shouldn't do. Originally, she didn't need to do this kind of thing. However, that elder brother of hers had a violent temper and refused to speak properly. If she didn't explain things clearly to her, she might feel even more conflicted. After a long time, if other people whispered into her ear and she did something irreversible, it would be even more troublesome. Yes, Nyang Nyang. Li Hongyuan stayed for half a day and ate lunch with Noble Consort Su and the others. He didn't leave the temporary imperial residence and strolled back to his own courtyard. On the way, he met other brothers who looked at him with a bit of hidden bitterness. Li Hongyuan was naturally clear about the inner workings, but these things had nothing to do with him. If they really had such thoughts, how could they shrink back just because of a few words from him? In the end, they didn't want face and wanted to leave a good impression with their father. Since that was the case, what was the point of being tainted by beauties? You had to give up something to gain something. It was impossible to not give up anything and still want to get everything. Li Hongyuan had 4 maidservants. 2 were left in the temporary imperial residence and 2 were left outside. At this time, Li Hongyuan looked at the maidservant standing in front of him with lowered eyebrows. To be honest, they could be considered first-class beauties and weren't inferior to the previous 8. In the past, as long as they did their jobs well, Li Hongyuan couldn't be bothered to look at them. But now, noble consort Su hadn't sent anyone to him for several years. He hadn't taken care of anyone for only a few months, but she had already started to care about her son. Of course, if he refused, she wouldn't force him. However, the 4 maidservants by his side were all virgins. It was said that some people's eyes were very sharp. If this continued, sooner or later, clues would be found out. His marriage with Wan had already been set. Even if it was discovered, it didn't matter. It would definitely not be linked to Wan. At most, it would be another round of wild guesses. For example, he was actually impotent. As long as these words didn't come from his wife's mouth, who would like to say it? However, it was still troublesome. If her fiancé was impotent, as his fiancé, she would definitely be involved in the rumors and be pointed at by others. Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable. Also, his so-called parents would probably be so worried that their hair would turn white. Even if they lost all their hair, it would have nothing to do with him. However, he was afraid that his ears would grow calluses. Therefore, it was better for these 4 maidservants to lose their virginity. Find yourself a man and consummate your marriage tonight. After the princess consort marries into the family, we will hold the wedding. Their master had always been too lazy to talk to them. Although they didn't know as much as the personal bodyguards and shadow guards, they were very clear that the Luo family's 3rd young lady had an extraordinary position in their master's heart. Originally, when they were suddenly called over, they were uneasy. Did they do something wrong to make their master unhappy? For them, there was nothing more frightening than this. Their master's temper was indeed bad, but in fact, as long as they did their jobs well, their days were the most leisurely and relaxed. Because from the beginning, they had already given up the idea of climbing into the bed. They didn't need to compete for favor. Everyone was the same, so naturally, they could get along with each other in harmony. There was no scheming against each other, and their monthly salary was also high. In the entire capital, there was probably no other maidservant who could compare to them. Losing this job was the last thing they wanted. However, what did their master say? Find someone to consummate their marriage. Did they hear wrongly? Why, is there a problem? Both of them trembled and replied without thinking, replying to master, there is no problem. In that case, you may leave. After the 2 of them left and returned to their rooms, they couldn't help but look at each other. What did he mean by no problem? There was a big problem. She wanted a girl to find a man for herself, and she even had to consummate the marriage tonight. She couldn't play with them like this. If master wanted to marry them off, he could have just pointed to someone. Obeying master's orders was a matter of course, and it was more than awkward. Now that they were offering themselves to a man to sleep with, they didn't have to worry about being rejected, but they would definitely be looked at strangely. Even if they got married in the future, the other party would still have a knot in his heart. For a moment, they wanted to cry but had no tears. Qingshi, what should we do? Qinggu tugged at her handkerchief, her face full of anxiety. Don't you have someone in your heart? Go find him. I'll just randomly find someone. Qingshi appeared to be more indifferent. But, no buts. Master means what he says. If he wants to find a man, we have to find one. If he wants to consummate our marriage tonight, we have to consummate our marriage tonight. Is Qing Xi the same as Qing Fu? Most likely. Master has always treated everyone equally. I'll go find him tonight. If he's not willing, I'll just randomly find someone. Qing Gu said in a fit of pique and helplessness. What about you? Do you have someone in mind? Qing Shi smiled faintly and didn't say anything. As for Eunuch Mu, who was basically always at the side, he also didn't know what to say. Sure enough, his master was a scourge. Not only did he harm outsiders, but he also harmed his own people. In any case, those beautiful servant girls also served him. Even if they didn't make any contributions or hard work, they were still under his name. Not to mention what the people who were chosen by those servant girls would think, if they were married off in the future, it wouldn't sound good. Fine, at that time, it was the princess consort who married them off. At worst, the princess consort would bear the title of a jealous woman, it was a small matter. Fart. Eunuch Mu kept a straight face and cursed seriously in his heart. If the princess consort knew the cause and effect, what kind of expression would she have? Then he glanced at Ni, who was also pretending to be a blockhead. As the head of the secret guards and the leader of the guards, because of his special status, he shouldn't be like other secret guards who had to wait until he retired to get married. However, the 4 servant girls only knew his identity on the surface. Maybe he had been targeted at this moment. Eunuch Mu was a little gloating. Master. Ni immediately knelt down on one knee and waited for orders. Send someone to inform Imperial Uncle Zhong that this prince feels that there are too few people serving him. Yes. So, not long after Lu Qingdi woke up from his afternoon nap and was about to read the memorial, Prince Zhong came to the door. Brother, I heard that there are 8 beauties, but nephew Hongyuan dislikes them very much. He dislikes them, but I don't dislike them. Give them all to me. It happens that I didn't bring many servants with me this time. Lu Qingdi looked at him for a moment. This younger brother was also a person who didn't abstain from meat and vegetables. He didn't do his job all day long. If the upper beam was not straight, the lower beam would be crooked. Even his sons were a group of bastards. However, he owed him after all. He knew what he was doing and didn't commit any major crimes. At most, it was just some trifles that attracted cats and dogs. It didn't matter if he raised him for a lifetime. Even if he died and his son ascended the throne, he was still an elder who didn't participate in the party struggle. Naturally, he wouldn't be mean to him. As for his children and grandchildren after his death, he couldn't care so much. Go to the imperial consort. Take it easy on yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Prince Zhong laughed carelessly. Brother, don't worry. I know. Lu Qingdi waved his hand, telling him to get lost quickly. It was annoying just to look at him. Prince Zhong quickly got lost. He went to the imperial consort Su and asked for the girls. Then, he proudly took the 8 dispirited beauties away. He didn't even care about those who were gossiping. What was face? How much was that thing worth? What was real? Everything else was fake. Don't think that he didn't hear the jealousy in some people's words. Therefore, when he met people who didn't take face seriously, he was the only one who was depressed. However, after Prince Zhong went back, the smile on his face disappeared. It could be seen that he wasn't as happy as he looked on the surface. It was true that he had been muddling along, but it didn't mean that he didn't have a brain. It was just that reality made him compromise again and again. In the end, he got used to it. He was used to making jokes and lowering his head in front of the strong. If his arm couldn't twist the thigh of others, then he wouldn't twist it. Isn't it good to just muddle along and wait for death? Prince Zhong laughed at himself. Then, he grabbed the beauties with each hand and entered the room. Life was short. It was time to enjoy it. Because he was in a bad mood, it was inevitable that he wouldn't be so gentle. In addition, it was the first time that the beauties had sex with him. The result could be imagined. Prince Zhong's consort was deposed, but his 2 concubines were still there. Therefore, it seemed that no one thought that Prince Zhong's 2 concubines were actually full. Then, what should Wang Fangfei do? Promote her to princess consort? Or demote a concubine? Or break the tradition and make her the 3rd concubine? The first was obviously impossible. Lu Qingdi firmly believed in Master Liaochen's words and would definitely suppress Wang Fangfei. The second was that in order to compensate Prince Zhong, his 2 concubines were of good birth and had children. They didn't do anything wrong. What reason did he have to demote them? Then, the third might be the only choice. However, the ancestral law was there. How could she deserve it? In the end, she might have the title of concubine, but her name wouldn't be on the Imperial Jade Archive. The result would be neither fish nor fowl. So far, who had realized this? Li Hongyuan probably didn't realize that Wang Fangfei wasn't worthy of his attention. But there were 2 people who definitely knew. They were Prince Zhong's 2 concubines. Their family backgrounds were similar. Without that vulgar and stupid consort suppression, it was very likely that one of them would be promoted. Yes, what they saw was not only the threat that Wang Fangfei brought, but also the opportunity. Why did they have to demote her to make room for her? Knowing Prince Zhong's character, they naturally didn't count on him. The 2 arranged the 8 women very tacitly. It was still uncertain whether the 2 who were already favored would be promoted to concubines. After all, there were 6 more. They couldn't promote all of them to concubines after they were favored. There was also a quota for the number of concubines a prince could have. Prince Zhong was full and the depression in his heart also disappeared. Anyway, this benefit was his. Send an invitation to Miss Yuan. Invite her to the manor to admire the flowers and drink tea. Prince Zhong ordered the 2 concubines. The 2 looked at each other and smiled at the same level. Yes, Your Highness. Chapter 193. Prince Zhong's side concubine invited Wang Fangfei because she wanted to know her temperament. No matter how much she heard, if there was no interaction, everything was in vain. As the saying goes, seeing is believing and hearing is false. Sometimes, seeing may not be true. Therefore, to want to see him or her, no matter who it was a very normal thing. The 2 side concubines were about the same age as Wang Fangfei's mother. However, if you were going to snatch their rice bowl, they would not be like your mother, protecting you everywhere and thinking for you in everything. On the contrary, if possible, they would definitely want to trample you to death. Wait, the 2 side concubines, she finally reacted in hindsight. Madame Yuan raised her eyebrows. Other than that, she did not have any other reaction. The current Wang Fangfei was not so much her daughter, but rather her subordinate. That was something that she should face by herself. As her superior, there was no need for him to worry about it, let alone help her come up with a plan. Besides, he had already taught her the things that belonged to the harem. If she was still so easily stepped on, it would not be a pity even if such a good-for-nothing died. Wang Fangfei did not wear a veil. The ugly scar on her face pierced into the eyes of everyone who saw her. No matter who it was, they were shocked at first. When they looked at her again, they had a different expression. It was not known if it was more disgust or more pity. There was no doubt that Wang Fangfei was unlucky. It was better to stay away. As the saying goes, if you don't go crazy, you won't survive. Wang Fangfei was now completely unconcerned. Her spirit looked better than before the accident. However, after everyone glanced at her, they hurriedly looked away. Therefore, they did not realize that her entire body was full of charm. Before her mother received the invitation and called her out, she was still fooling around with her new, beautiful maid. Madame Wang glanced at her. Restrain yourself. If something happens to your father now, you won't have a good time. Ruan Fangfei did not seem to hear it. However, her posture became dignified, restrained, and gentle. Madame Wang handed the invitation to her. Do as you see fit. If there's nothing else, you can go back. Ruan Fangfei sneered. Mother is really heartless. Yesterday, she was still his sweetheart. Now, she had become an existence that he could command at will. Although she was smiling on the surface, she still felt a huge difference in her heart. Just like a noble lady who had fallen into debauchery, even if she had prepared herself mentally, it would still take a process to completely accept it from her body to her heart. This process was destined to be unknown, and it was bound to be painful. Madame Ruan's expression didn't change. If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck. You can't be a noble lady. Ruan Fangfei coldly tugged at the corner of her mouth. Don't worry, I won't let go of anyone who caused me to be in this situation today. As long as they weren't dissolute by nature, how many women would choose not to be a good person and live a clean life? The next day, Ruan Fangfei tidied up and went out as a guest. She still had to maintain her manners. Imitating Sun Yijia's makeup, Ruan Fangfei also put on makeup for herself, but the style was completely different. Because the pigments were far less complete than Jingwan's, the choice was smaller. Moreover, she didn't know that some things couldn't be used on the body. She didn't spend any effort to cover up the black line, but used it as the foundation. It should be said that Ruan Fangfei was indeed a talented girl who was all-round. The final effect was very good. It covered up the elegance of a hibiscus emerging from the water, and presented a different kind of charm and enchanting. Ruan Fangfei hooked her dark red lips and smiled. So what if she was disfigured? Men couldn't escape from her palms either. How could these two old women compare to her? However, it had to be said that Ruan Fangfei's experience was still too little. Behind the open and above board, there might be a trap. When she knew that the person behind the scenes was Li Hongyuan, she should have enough vigilance. However, Li Hongyuan had been in the underworld for decades in his previous life. In this life, he had made arrangements early and knew what Ruan Fangfei had done. To this extent, if he couldn't deal with a woman in the boudoir, he shouldn't expect to have any ambitions, let alone change his fate. In the end, Ruan Fangfei didn't know Li Hongyuan and didn't know how capable he was. If she knew, she wouldn't be more careful, but completely hide and wouldn't try to provoke him. That was like an ant trying to shake a tree. The disparity in strength was too great. There was no comparison at all. Ruan Fangfei was led to the backyard of Prince Zhong's courtyard. Then, Ruan Fangfei saw Prince Zhong in the pavilion. If she still didn't react, then she was really hopelessly stupid. She subconsciously took a step back. Then, she realized something and looked back. Sure enough, all the people she brought were invited away. 3 steps away from her, it wasn't the powerful old woman, but a guard with a sword. Ruan Fangfei clenched her fists. Because she was not in good spirits recently, she naturally lost a lot of weight. Her joints were distinct and her skin was very thin, as if it was transparent. Therefore, the blue veins on the back of her hand were clearly visible. Knowing that she couldn't leave now, she took a deep breath and walked towards Prince Zhong step by step. She didn't know that she was actually walking towards hell. That nightmarish night, a moment that she never wanted to recall, was about to play out in broad daylight. Compared to that time when she couldn't see anything, everything that happened during the day was completely reflected in her eyes and engraved in her heart. Everyone's expressions, everyone's movements. She was like a masochist, unwilling to close her eyes from beginning to end. Even if she had exquisite makeup, no one gave her a chance to show it. Moreover, in Prince Zhong's eyes, that enchanting makeup was not an ordinary kind of hateful. She was already his woman, who else did she want to seduce? After a bucket of water, her makeup was smeared, but she didn't wash it clean. Mixed together, it was a disgusting dirty water. However, this also allowed Prince Zhong to see her true appearance under the makeup. What the hell was this? Although the number one beauty in the capital had always been controversial, many people recognized Yuan Fangfei. Now that she had become this ugly, Prince Zhong's evil fire burned even more. Even if she had fallen for sex, this voluntary fall was a kind of enjoyment, while forced violence was a kind of torture. It was not only physical, but also spiritual. Unexpectedly, she thought of the first time they had touched that rough palm. Yet, those lowly people who had defiled her were still living well in a place where she could not see. She did not care. She kept them and slowly played with them. That was just self-comfort after not being able to take revenge. Probably because it was really too disgusting, Yuan Fangfei couldn't help but vomit. Prince Zhong was furious. She dared to disgust him with such a ghastly appearance. He ordered people to force the things she vomited back. Yuan Fangfei also grew up in luxury. Although she couldn't be compared to the nobles, she was still a gold and jade. Today, such filth, naturally, the more it was forced down, the more disgusting it was. The more disgusting it was, the more she vomited. It was simply a vicious cycle. In the end, when Yuan Fangfei was released, she collapsed to the ground, her body twitching slightly. She only felt that her liver and intestines were cut to pieces, and a yellowish liquid was still flowing out from the corner of her mouth. "Someone come, take Miss Yuan away and wash her face properly." Yuan Fangfei was dragged away by two women. Yuan Fangfei was combed neatly. If one didn't look at her dispirited appearance, she seemed to be a pampered girl in the palm of the hand. At this time, it was almost an hour since Yuan Fangfei entered the courtyard. Just like the previous time, they had a sense of propriety. Even if she was injured, it was only some minor injuries. After wearing clothes, it couldn't even be seen at all. At this time, Yuan Fangfei didn't shout hysterically. Instead, she appeared very quiet. There was no hatred in her eyes for these people who humiliated her. Anyone who saw it would feel strange. Prince Zhong looked at her and confirmed that she wasn't stupid because of the blow. He sneered, "Once, outsiders praised you so highly that even many men heard about you. They said that you were really noble and unattainable. It turns out that in your bones, you are a promiscuous woman. It can be seen that this rumor, whether good or bad, is not necessarily credible." Yuan Fangfei raised her head and looked at him. Her eyes were like a pool of stagnant water. "Your Highness, may I ask why?" Prince Zhong understood her meaning immediately. He sneered, "A woman who is even worse than a girl in a brothel. If you want to ask why, it's like asking those men who often sleep with prostitutes why they sleep with a woman who has slept with others. It's as ridiculous as asking those men who often sleep with prostitutes why they sleep with a woman who has slept with others. Besides, this prince is playing in my own home. Could it be that someone will spread the news?" Yuan Fangfei warned herself not to be angry. She revealed a trace of weakness and helplessness. Why does Prince say this? Even if this subject and Prince have been intimate, I have never been tainted with other men. Why are Prince's words so hurtful? What you have done, so. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. With this man's bad nature, he naturally couldn't see a woman like this. However, Yuan Fangfei's face was disfigured, so the effect was greatly reduced. In addition, Prince Zhong knew the cause and effect. Not only did he not pity her, but he was also furious because she was still pretending at this moment. He waved his hand and slapped her. Slut! Wan Fangfei didn't have much strength at this time. This slap directly knocked her to the ground. Prince Zhong grabbed her hair and pulled her up. He leaned close to her ear. You ran out to meet men in the middle of the night and ended up sleeping with a group of men. Then, you schemed against this prince and made this prince take the blame. You still dare to say that it has nothing to do with others. Just a piece of trash like you wants to cling on to this prince and continue to live a comfortable life of luxury. Wishful thinking. If you behave, this prince will still give you a bite to eat. If you don't, I'll directly throw you into a brothel. Who did Prince hear this from to slander this subject's daughter? This subject's daughter really didn't. Wan Fangfei cried uncontrollably. On the surface, she was like this, but in her heart, she was filled with hatred. She had painstakingly schemed to choose the lesser of two evils, but in the end, she was still exposed. Why did he always have to go against her? You still dare to quibble. Everyone knew that there was something fishy about the situation at that time. Prince Zhong also deeply hated himself for being so easily tricked. After knowing the whole story, he really wanted to slap this slut to death. Therefore, after this man was schemed against, he became angry out of humiliation instead of reflecting on himself. If she said another word, Prince Zhong might really choke her to death in anger. Wan Fangfei could only shut up. When she couldn't argue and showed weakness, Wan Fangfei also put away her pitiful appearance. Prince, my father is still the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Prince Zhong sneered. If this prince reveals everything about you, how can that old thing still be the Grand Secretary? With such a bad family style, the daughter he raised is so hypocritical and morally corrupt. What qualifications does he have to assist the emperor in ruling the world? Even if he doesn't do anything, how long can he last after being angered by you, this unfilial daughter? Do you really think that you are the smartest person in the world? You don't know that in the eyes of others, you are just a jumping clown. Hearing this, the first person Wan Fangfei thought of was Li Hongyuan. Other than him, there was no one else. However, even if she was certain that it was him, she didn't have any evidence. Recalling what Li Hongyuan said, he wouldn't easily take her life. Everything had just begun. Finally, a trace of fear for that man was born in her heart. At the same time, she also felt endless jealousy and hatred towards Jingwan. Clearly, that man was the first person she fancied. Don't take what you think is a big deal. To be honest, this prince is a single prince without power and influence. Under normal circumstances, I really don't dare to go against the Grand Secretary. Unfortunately, your Wan family has declined and lost too quickly. And all of this is because of you. If you don't want the Wan family to be completely overturned, remember to be on call. When this prince is happy, I might even give you some face as a secondary consort. In any case, this prince is also very excited to see you. Next time when you come, wash your face clean. It is obviously very ugly, but you still painted it so seductively. Who else do you want to seduce? Sure enough, you are a slut who is not content with her family. After venting, his heart was probably satisfied. Prince Zhong asked someone to tidy her up and applied some medicine to her face. He even carefully put on a veil for her. Wan Fangfei was sent to the carriage. The maidservant trembled with fear and lowered her head, not daring to look at her. Although it was not obvious, as someone who served her closely, how could she not notice it at all? Wan Fangfei's face was like stagnant water. Everything was not going according to plan. The repeated setbacks made her sober up a lot. In the face of absolute power, no matter how many schemes she had, she could not use them. It did not matter if you were crazy, or crazy. One person could defeat 10 people and make you unable to move. Just because the other party was a prince and was born in the imperial family, other than that, he could still suppress her to the point that she could not breathe. She used to be disdainful of the imperial princesses and did not take them seriously. But now, if she was a princess, even if she was not favored, she would not be bullied like this. The imperial family, the imperial power, but now was not the time to think about this. What could she do to get out of this predicament? After thinking about it, her mother seemed to be the only way out she could find. Li Hongyuan was obviously not as simple as he looked on the surface. Then, was it possible to use this as a threat to make him hesitate to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases? But her mother did not have such an idea at all. The one who was really afraid to shoot the rat for fear of breaking the vases was her. She was really useless. After operating for so many years, in the end, she was still timid. Ruan Fangfei returned to the Ruan family. She did not want to see anyone in the Ruan family right now. However, things did not go as she wished. When she passed by the small garden, she met Ruan Ruizhong, who was drinking tea and playing chess with her. A piece of trash who could not even protect his wife and daughter, and still had the leisure to be here alone. Men were indeed not good things. However, she did not see that he had aged countless times compared to a month ago. In the past, because of proper maintenance, he looked much younger than his actual age. But now, it was completely consistent. She did not notice that this man, who had always had high daily requirements, was getting more and more decadent. He had always been meticulous, but there were more strands of messy hair. She also did not notice that he had not touched his favorite flowers and trees for a long time. And in front of her eyes, what was displayed on the chessboard was not leisure, but anxiety and powerlessness. He was a man with his own self-esteem and pride. A month ago, it could be said that he could call the wind and summon the rain. Now, he was isolated and helpless, tasting the hypocrisy of the world that he had not tasted in the past few decades. Because he was the head of the family, the pillar of the family. Everyone had places to express their sorrow, but he did not, and he could not say it. To a certain extent, the pain in his heart, compared to others, would only be worse. He bore the burden of the entire family's decline. It was already a miracle that he had not fallen yet. Greetings to father. Ruan Fangfei could not help but speak from her heart. No matter what she thought in her heart, she still needed his protection. Ruan Ruizhong nodded. I heard from your mother that Prince Zhong's concubine invited you to have tea. How was your trip? Except for the stagnant water in his eyes that could not be melted, he could be considered gentle. Father, don't worry. The two concubines are quite amiable. That's good. Once you enter the prince's mansion, it will not be the same as at home. Forget it. Your mother will explain these things to you in detail. Go back and rest. Ruan Ruizhong's feelings for Ruan Fangfei became more and more complicated. It was no longer pure love. Except for the unconscious alienation, perhaps it was mixed with the hatred that he himself had not noticed. Ruan Fangfei was also favored. If it was someone who was not favored, they would have been silently disposed of. Even if they did not die, they would quickly fade out of everyone's sight. From this point of view, Ruan Fangfei was very fortunate. However, she herself did not realize it. She took other people's kindness for granted. When there was a little unhappiness, she would naturally feel that others had wronged her. Ruan Fangfei was not the only one like this, there were many. Then daughter will take her leave first. Ruan Fangfei left. But after taking a few steps, she stopped and hesitated. Father, please take care of your body. Everything is daughter's fault. If Ruan Fangfei stammered, daughter has nothing to be unwilling about. Ruan Ruizhong looked disappointed. Don't think too much. Go back and rest. Perhaps he thought that he understood Ruan Fangfei's unfinished words, but in fact, Ruan Fangfei didn't say or do anything. She just understood the most basic human nature. If she retreated a little in order to advance and sacrificed herself at the right time, she would get more pity. Even if she abandoned him, he would hesitate and feel guilty. This guilt was her opportunity. No matter whether this opportunity was useful or not, there was no harm in saving it in advance. Knowing that the maid who was newly assigned to Ruan Fangfei was valued by her, when they saw her return, the others did not rush forward. However, it was different from what she had expected. When no one touched Ruan Fangfei, a sense of disgust suddenly rose in her heart. A creepy feeling started from the skin that came into contact with her and spread to her entire body. Ruan Fangfei gave him a backhand slap. No matter how a man looked like a woman, no matter how beautiful he dressed up as a woman, it couldn't change the fact that he was a man, especially when she saw the evil root that didn't match his appearance at all last night. The maid did not know how she had angered her and hurriedly knelt down to beg for forgiveness. Ruan Fangfei looked down from above, her eyes engraved with malice. All men in the world should die. Bring me the whip. Ruan Fangfei did not whip people for a day or two. Once or twice. Her whip was specially made. On the surface, it looked like a layer of fluff. In fact, the fluff was very hard. After being whipped, the skin would definitely split open and the scars left behind could not be removed. If she wanted to whip people, no one around her dared to stop her. She took the whip and shook it. With a swoosh, the whip lashed out. The maid let out a muffled groan and did not dare to move. She vented everything that she had suffered before at this moment. Her strikes were vicious and ruthless. However, after a few strikes, her hands became weak. The previous encounter had exhausted her too much and her stomach was empty. However, if she were to eat now, she would definitely not be able to eat. She threw the whip to the maid next to her. You do it. If one of the whips is not deep enough and there is no blood, I will whip you 10 times. That maid happened to have eaten the whip before, so she did not dare to not use her full strength. Ruan Fangfei sat to the side and a maidservant served her tea. She glanced at the yellowish tea and remembered the filth she had vomited earlier. Her stomach churned again and she immediately smashed the cup. Damned cheap maidservant. No one knew what she had experienced. Naturally, they did not know how they had angered her. They could only hurriedly kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Ruan Fangfei tore off her veil and threw it to the side. The marks on her face were exposed and she looked more and more like a real evil spirit. Don't worry. You all have a share. One by one. She did as she said. One by one, one by one, one by one. More than half of the people in the courtyard could not escape. Moreover, they were not allowed to make a sound. Whoever dared to make a sound would be given 10 more whips. Their clothes were torn and the flesh under the clothes was lacerated. The air was filled with a faint smell of blood. Looking at their painful expressions and even those who could not hold on had already fainted, she smiled very happily. At this moment, she discovered that there was no color more beautiful than red in the world. Especially that blood-like red. She even reached out and dipped her hand in the blood and licked it. Oh, it's actually so delicious. Fangfei, what are you doing? Old Madame Ruan knew that Ruan Fangfei was venting her anger on the servants but did not care. Thinking that she had suffered a loss, it did not matter if she vented her anger. However, it continued for a long time. Moreover, if she did not stop it, she was afraid that someone would die. Thus, she made a trip. However, the scene she saw made her frown. This daughter, even the most basic human nature was slowly degenerating. This kind of person, once she could not control her, she would immediately bite her master. Old Madame Wang clenched her fists behind her back. Letting her mother do it personally is not a bad idea. Chapter 194. Letting her mother do it herself isn't a bad idea. Li Hongyuan stirred the tea, paused, and put the cup back. He didn't know what method Luo Peishan was going to use to process the tea leaves. If he was slow, it would take a few months, but if he was fast, the tea leaves would be ready by this time. No matter what, he was the one who picked them, so there was nothing wrong with going to take a look. As for Wan Fangfei, he basically didn't need to do anything. With Uncle Wang there, he only needed to watch over them at the right time. As for Wan Ruizhong, he only needed to give him one more straw. This could be delayed. He already had a plan for when to make a move. It wouldn't take too long. In any case, before returning to the capital, everything should be settled. Who did you look for last night? Li Hongyuan looked indifferently at Qing Shi and Qing Gu, who were bringing the young maidservants to serve lunch. He didn't suspect that they would disobey his orders, nor did he have any interest in the private affairs of his subordinates. It was just that when he saw them, he suddenly thought of it and was a little curious. Qing Ji's hand trembled and almost dropped the plate in her hand. On the other hand, Qing Shi was very calm and naturally reached out to catch it. She then placed it on the table. If she smashed the plate now, it would be equivalent to smashing her little life. Li Hongyuan wouldn't take their lives for such a small matter, but it was certain that he wouldn't let them continue to serve by his side. They would return to where they came from. As for the maidservants who knew some things about Li Hongyuan, even without Li Hongyuan's order, Eunuch Mu wouldn't let them leave in one piece. Not being able to speak or write was the most basic. That was equivalent to being a cripple. Moreover, if they were sent back by their master, there would definitely be a problem. Who else would use them? Among the servants, the situation of flattering the strong and stepping on the weak was even more serious. When in power, those who were older than you would affectionately call you elder sister or master. Once you lost power, they would immediately spit at you and squeeze you to death. Qing Gu looked at Qing Shi gratefully. Sure enough, she hadn't trained enough and still needed to be sharpened. Serving by Li Hongyuan's side was definitely a very tough thing to do. Basically, being able to smoothly serve under him for 3 months, then if it was outside, others would probably give him a thumbs up and say, "You're not flustered in the face of change, amazing." Who knew that this was the most basic thing in Jin Qin Wang Fu? Of course, when faced with the master's sullen face, no one could withstand it. It was clearly something that would make a girl so ashamed that she would be unable to show her face. Just because the master didn't care at all, she had to also not care when replying. Therefore, after putting down the things in her hands, she dismissed the young servant girl and respectfully replied. Replying to master, "It's the brat in charge of all the flowers and plants in the prince's mansion." Qing Shi was the first to speak. Replying to master, "It's the guards." Li Hongyuan raised his hand and Qingge hurriedly shut her mouth. The guards he brought weren't few, but compared to the other brothers, there weren't many. If he only chose from the guards, other than an E, it didn't matter who it was. The maidservants around him also knew their limits. Those people couldn't be chosen, so they should have a plan in their hearts. However, gardener, you chose it yourself. Because of Jingwan, Li Hongyuan valued the flowers and plants in the prince's mansion very much. And the things he looked at, for the people who took care of them, their value would naturally multiply. Therefore, gardeners who didn't have any status elsewhere, in Jin Qin Wang Fu, there were many people who fought to be gardeners. Even if they didn't know how to do it, they would also secretly learn, hoping that one day they could compete for the position. In the prince's mansion, there were hundreds of servants, but those who could see Li Hongyuan were actually a minority among the minority. And the people who served by his side were naturally the targets of other people's flattery. However, these people were also not easy to see. No matter where they were, they paid attention to the rules and did their own things. The prince's mansion was so big, but the places they could go were very small. If they dared to walk around randomly, once they were caught, being sold was a light punishment. Although the gardener was slightly valued by Li Hongyuan, it was different from the Yahuan at his side. The Yahuan could know some things, but the gardener couldn't. The reason why Li Hongyuan would bring the gardener over was only because when next year's summer vacation, Wan would be with him and not with the Luo family. No matter if it was inside the summer palace or the other courtyards outside, they all needed to be meticulously taken care of. Qing Shi naturally also knew this situation and hesitated. It was he who came to find me. Ben Wang actually didn't know that there was such an idiot like you by my side. Just a random man who came to find you and you responded. This matter, how did he know? In Jin Qin Wang Fu, except for a few people, everyone else also thought that the 4 Yahuan at his side were all there to warm his bed. This matter, if you said it was big, then it was small. But no matter what, the matter related to him was leaked out. Someone must have neglected their duty. At that time, there were only these few people present, so they all knelt down and begged for forgiveness. If there was one matter that was leaked out, it meant that other matters were also possible. The gardener slipped over at the fastest speed. Originally, because he had won the beauty, he was flushed with success. But suddenly, such a thing happened. For a moment, he was stunned. Facing his master who was imposing without being angry, he knelt on the ground and trembled. However, Li Hongyuan wasn't interested in handling this matter himself. Muan, Ben Wang only wants results. Yes, master. Mu Gonggong hurriedly responded. He was Li Hongyuan's close attendant and also the steward of Jin Qin Wang Fu. When there was no accident, naturally everything was fine. But once something happened, it would be difficult for him to absolve himself from the blame. Therefore, at this time, Mu Gonggong also hated to the point of wanting to kill someone. Except for an E, everyone else retreated. Master, do you want to eat? An excellent shadow guard serving his master's meal was also not a problem. Li Hongyuan looked at the large table full of exquisite dishes and didn't have much appetite. Now, it seemed that he didn't want to eat alone. But now, he was in the temporary residence. He didn't even need to eat lunch and left in a hurry. His good Mufei would probably nag again. He ate more or less, but the main dishes on the table were not touched. In the summer, who would eat those oily and greasy things? The cook he brought naturally knew his taste. Therefore, these main dishes were in fact sent by Lu Qingdi and concubine Su. Even if they knew his taste, they were afraid that he wouldn't eat well and said that he ate too bland. Therefore, they kept sending. Li Hongyuan ate a little and put down his chopsticks. Take it down. You can divide it. Thank you, master, for the reward. Ne said. After going out for a moment, he came in with the other brothers and nimbly cleaned up the table. For the servants, these were not the leftovers of the master, but a gift. Without the master's order, the people in the kitchen could only secretly drool after receiving the food. After all, the food that was served to Li Hongyuan, even if it was a small cabbage, was carefully cultivated and extraordinary, not to mention the other dishes. The ingredients used were all first class. Some of the dishes only had one ingredient, and perhaps they would not be able to earn money for the ingredients in the kitchen in their lifetime. How could they not be envious? On Eunuch Mu's side, the results of the interrogation had already come out. It was just a coincidence. The gardener had a bear's heart and leopard's guts. He had long taken a fancy to Qing Shi, but he knew that she was the master's person, so he had been bitterly suppressing himself. Who knew that yesterday in the garden, he accidentally heard Qing Shi talking to a guard? The general idea was vague, but he understood the essence. Then, he excitedly ran out to find Qingshi. However, he didn't dare to break into the master's courtyard, so he could only wait outside while scratching his ears and cheeks. Even after confirming that Qingshi was in the main room, he had been anxious and uneasy. He waited until night time when he finally saw Qingshi come out. Because he had waited for too long, from the beginning, he was worried whether Qingshi would refuse or whether she already had someone else in her heart. When he saw her, he didn't think about anything else and directly went up to her. Therefore, from the beginning, the gardener didn't think about whether Qingshi was a virgin or not. Even if she wasn't, he wouldn't have minded. In fact, Qingshi had a bit of a broken jar and had the idea of falling for whoever she met. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dawdled until night time. The gardener's appearance was out of her expectations. At that time, she thought that if someone took the initiative, it would save her the embarrassment of taking the initiative. Then, things became so muddle-headed. Only then did Qingshi realize that there were some problems, but it was too late for regrets. Therefore, she wanted to find an opportunity to explain to the master, but Li Hongyuan asked first. Eunuch Mu had used some extreme methods and combined with the confessions of several people, he couldn't find any loopholes. Even so, Qing Ji's new lover didn't notice that someone had heard the conversation between Qing Gu and him. Whether it was because he heard something too shocking or not, his attention was all on Qing Gu. He had neglected his duty, so he had to be punished. Qing Gu was also punished. As for Qingshi, she was negligent and didn't understand the situation clearly before she ran away with someone. That was even more unforgivable. Therefore, these two pairs of Mandarin ducks were not left behind. The most miserable one was the gardener, who was punished severely by Eunuch Mu. He was already half dead. He directly lay in front of Li Hongyuan and couldn't get up. Even so, he still banged his head on the ground and begged Li Hongyuan not to punish Qingshi. He was willing to bear the punishment for the two of them. Li Hongyuan was infatuated with Jingwan, but it didn't mean that he would have compassion when he saw other infatuated people. He didn't care about other people, so he didn't look at them and directly got up to leave. Eunuch Mu was about to follow when Li Hongyuan suddenly stopped and turned around. 20 planks. Eunuch Mu's heart trembled. He felt that he was wronged, but he didn't dare to plead for mercy. Yes. Li Hongyuan was already used to it. If it was someone else who didn't understand his temperament, it would only be more troublesome. After Li Hongyuan walked away, Eunuch Mu's face was a bit gloomy. He raised his foot to kick the gardener, but he was blocked halfway by Qingshi. That's right, the four maidservants of Qingshi, Gu, and Fu were not delicate. They all had a certain foundation in martial arts. Li Hongyuan didn't need those maidservants who couldn't lift their shoulders. When needed, he could use women as men and men as livestock. He wouldn't pity them because they were young or because they were women. There was only one person he would pity. Being blocked, Eunuch Mu's face turned even darker, but he could only glare at Qingshi. There was nothing else he could do. He was Li Hongyuan's personal attendant and Jin Qin Wang Fu's steward. These were all true. However, the people around Li Hongyuan, the phenomenon of flattering the high and stepping on the low was the lightest. Because it was impossible to put other people's eyes in front of him. Thus, as long as the master was not biased, even if you had more power, it was useless. If there was an internal strife, Li Hongyuan would be able to sweep them all with a spoon. Those that Eunuch Mu could casually step on were those that couldn't squeeze in front of Li Hongyuan. Eunuch Mu could only flick his sleeves and leave. When there were only two people left, Qingshi helped him up. Her heart was very complicated. Originally, she didn't expect to find a good person in this life, but suddenly, an infatuated person appeared. The punishment for two people, your little life is gone. Do you want me to find another one after you die? The gardener was stunned. Then I'll help you bear part of it. It's fine as long as it doesn't take my life. In the future, let me take care of everything. Qing Shi, what do you say? Qing Shi looked at this face that could only be considered delicate and pretty. That serious expression with a bit of apprehension, she suddenly burst out laughing. When Li Hongyuan went to Luo family, he didn't hide from anyone and was very calm. He also didn't worry about people suspecting that he was roping in Luo Peishan. Thinking about it, Luo Peishan now had a tendency to develop into a solitary official. Just ask, to support someone to the throne, was it possible to just be a minister of the Ministry of Appointments? When Li Hongyuan entered Luo family's door, he was more leisurely and at ease than when he entered his own home. Those who didn't know would think that this was his home. Luo Peishan's nose and eyes weren't his nose and his nose. Jing Wan was also a bit speechless. Wang, yeah, you just came the night before, so you don't need to come so diligently. In the end, Li Hongyuan still gave Luo Peishan some face and didn't completely ignore him. He focused his attention on Jing Wan and changed the topic to the tea leaves, indicating that he wanted to take a look. Luo Peishan's expression finally improved a little. Then, he took it out with a bit of intention to show off. It was only a shallow box less than half the size of a palm. The tea inside looked pitifully small. Only this much. Of course not. Luo Peishan said unhappily. Chapter 195. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything else. He watched as Luo Peishan personally brewed the tea. From time to time, he would turn back and whisper to Jing Wan. There was a bit of contentment and relaxation, not to mention the gentle smile on his face from beginning to end. Anyone could see that it was joy from the bottom of his heart. And perhaps Jing Wan was affected by him. She also looked leisurely and contented. She was smiling and her eyes seemed to be shining. Between them, there seemed to be no place for a second person to come between them. When Luo Jingbue and Sun Yijia slowly walked over, they saw this kind of scene. The husband and wife couldn't help but stare blankly and look at each other. Could it be that Jin Qinhuang's rumored great favor is like this? Xiao Mei can have such an attitude towards him, it's no wonder that I heard that those women would want to die in the end. Luo Jingbue said rather emotionally. Sun Yijia looked at him speechlessly. What kind of expression was that to come up with such a damned conclusion? That was a prince, a Qin Wang. It wasn't like he couldn't get the previous woman, and it wasn't like he wanted to get the other party's heart. Would he lower himself to deliberately cater to the other party? Dream on. This clearly showed that he was treating Wan Mimi like this. And to be able to create a world that only belonged to the two of them and not let Wan Mimi notice, Jin Qinhuang really didn't have ordinary good intentions. Sun Yijia felt that for the time being, she should be able to rest assured about Wan Mimi's future days. Then she looked at the one beside her. Regarding the feelings between men and women, her husband was actually a blockhead. However, Sun Yijia wouldn't complain that he didn't know how to be romantic. As the saying goes, no one is perfect. It was better and more realistic to have a flaw. She couldn't be more satisfied with this husband. The arrival of the two people naturally broke the atmosphere between Jing Wan and Li Hongyuan. Luo Jingbue always felt that his future brother-in-law's gaze was a bit cold, but Sun Yijia directly ignored it. It was still too early for him to get divorced, but he was already seducing his sister-in-law in front of them. Did he really think that they were blind? How could he not take her family seriously? Even if he was a noble, he couldn't do it. Luo Peishan was quite happy about their appearance. As for why, he himself could not explain it clearly. He felt that the atmosphere just now was too strange. He even felt that his presence as an old man was unnecessary. If he continued to stay, he would be struck by lightning. Now that there were two more people, that feeling disappeared, so she could focus on making tea again. Being disturbed, Li Hongyuan was not very angry. He said a few words to Luo Peishan and said a few words about his tea art. It was obviously a very ordinary meaning, but when it came from Li Hongyuan's mouth, it seemed to be very pleasant to hear. Didn't you see that he was a little strange before? Now he was happy and happy. Jing Wan looked at Li Hongyuan in surprise. She knew a little bit about Li Hongyuan's temperament. He was someone who didn't even hold back when he talked back to Luqing Emperor. Unexpectedly, he was able to say something like a compliment. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled at her. Under normal circumstances, if he really wanted to please someone, there was basically no one he couldn't get. Jing Wan couldn't help but laugh. Alright, someone was doing this because of her. She was grateful for that. If a married woman's mother's family and her husband's family were not on good terms, she would definitely be very uncomfortable if she was caught in the middle. For example, her sister-in-law Sun Yijia. In fact, she was not bad. After all, her family did not embarrass her. If they were angry with her because of her mother's relationship with her, or even hated her, then her life would be very difficult. So, Jingwan said thank you to him with her lips. Li Hongyuan smiled, but with a little bad intention. It was impossible to send him away with a thank you. Jingwan secretly rolled her eyes in her heart. It was too tasteless to ask her for a reward like this. It didn't matter whether he was tasteless or not. It was more important to get benefits. After drinking a new kind of wild tea, the taste was mellow. After tasting it carefully, it was a little bitter, but then it became sweet. It lasted for a long time. It was really good. However, because Sun Yijia was pregnant, it was a pity that she couldn't taste it. When she could drink it, the tea leaves were so little that the residue couldn't be seen. Grandfather, why don't you give the child a name? Jingwan said. This tea was picked by Prince. It's more appropriate for Prince to name it Yuanwan. Li Hongyuan blurted out. The others were still thinking about what it meant. It sounded strange. Jingwan couldn't help blushing. She glared at Li Hongyuan. Prince, what nonsense are you talking about? Well, there was no need to ask. They already knew what it meant, but they pretended not to understand. Li Hongyuan laughed unscrupulously. Otherwise, Yuanwan is fine too. Your Highness, putting her name before his meant that he was prepared to let the rumors and slanders drown her. No, it probably wouldn't be just rumors. Those who were similar to the moralists would also come out to attack her and criticize her until she was black and blue. Even the emperor would reprimand her. Alright, pretend I didn't say anything. So, he let it go. However, he didn't mention naming the tea leaves again. Before he finished his cup of tea, Madame Luo brought some people to bring over a lot of tea and snacks. Li Hongyuan didn't eat much before he came out. Now that he was hungry and had an appetite, he ate a lot. Prince, did you not eat lunch? Under normal circumstances, no one would eat snacks as food. After all, these things were very common at their level, not to mention the things used by Li Hongyuan, who was better off than his father. I don't have an appetite, so I didn't eat much. Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. He had personally experienced the so-called feast for the eyes. Probably because his gaze was too obvious, Jingwan unconsciously blushed and looked away. If so, this subject's wife will ask the kitchen to prepare some food for Prince. Madame Luo suggested calmly. Just make a bowl of vegetarian noodles. Li Hongyuan didn't refuse. Please wait a moment, Prince. Madame Luo turned around and ordered. The servant left in a hurry. We have a cook who is very good at cooking noodles. He brought it over from Qi and Prefecture. Jingwan smiled. Oh. Then this prince will have to taste it. Jingwan nodded. Prince might like it. You'll know after you try it. It wasn't made by his wife. Of course, Li Hongyuan wouldn't say, it must be delicious, without tasting it. Girl, you need to practice your culinary skills properly, old Madame Luo said meaningfully from the side. Jingwan looked at her grandmother speechlessly. How could she expose her shortcomings like this? Besides, her culinary skills were not good, and it was all because of her grandmother's indulgence. She said that a lady from a respectable family did not need to learn these things. Regardless of whether it was before or after marriage, there would always be a chef. She only needed to know how to make some dishes. When the time came for her to cook at her husband's house, she could just watch from the side and say a few words. That would be considered as cooking personally. But now, she said that she needed to practice properly. Jingwan probably only felt a little embarrassed that her shortcomings were exposed, but Li Hongyuan understood that these words were actually meant for him. There are 10 to 20 chefs in the prince's estate who are good at everything. If not, you can go to the palace and ask Imperial Father for a chef. There's no need for Princess to cook personally. Jingwan is so delicate and delicate. The kitchen is messy. What if she gets hurt? So, Madame Luo doesn't need to ask too much of Jingwan when it comes to cooking. It's the same for female workers. It'll hurt your eyes and hands. Then, Prince, please bear with it in the future. Madame Luo said with a satisfied expression. Even the dullest person would know what Madame Luo meant by exposing her shortcomings. Besides, Jingwan was never a dullard. She was clearly telling Li Hongyuan that if he wanted her to cook, he shouldn't even think about it. Fortunately, a certain someone was tactful. If he had said something unpleasant, it would have been awkward. However, this kind of thing could be said in private. How could he say it in front of her? Speaking of which, it seemed that no daughter of a family would personally entertain her fiancé. So, they were all in the privileged class. If he wanted to see her, her family naturally wouldn't dare to stop him. People who didn't play by the rules were really annoying. But they didn't know that this matter was actually mutual love and not someone's coercion. I'll go see if the noodles are ready. Jingwan stood up a little anxiously. She didn't wait for them to respond and directly left, unruly. However, she was the apple of everyone's eye, so no one cared about her. Seeing Jingwan leave, Sun Yijia also stood up and excused herself. Originally, she only came out to greet Jingwan, but because of Jingwan's presence, she stayed a little longer. However, not long after the two of them left, a servant came to say that Prince Rui had sent someone over. Should they see him? The masters of the Luo family all looked at Li Hongyuan. Logically speaking, this was the Luo family's matter, so it wasn't Li Hongyuan's place to interfere. However, that person had a subtle relationship with this person. The Luo family was also tired of Prince Rui. In fact, they wanted to use this overlord's hand to reject him. Call him in. This prince will take care of everything. The person who took away his beautiful cabbage, naturally, he didn't have a good expression. However, this person was really good at doing things. Prince Rui sent a mama. Without a doubt, it should be related to the inner compound. This mama wasn't someone else. She happened to be the one who received Luo Jingying from the Luo family last time, the one who was highly regarded by Li Hongming. Lu Mama probably didn't expect that Prince Jean would also be here and hurriedly paid her respects. Facing other people, even if it was noble consort Su, she could still calmly deal with them. However, facing Li Hongyuan, she was a little fearful and could only strive to be calm. What did Li Hongming ask you to come to the Luo family for? Li Hongyuan directly called his elder brother by his name. It could be seen that he wasn't the least bit polite. Replying to Wang Ye, Master, let this servant come to report the good news. Luo family Shiqiang is pregnant. Shiqiang. Li Hongyuan was silent for a moment. Ben Wang remembered correctly. It should be 1 month, and she's already pregnant. Why else would it be said that Shiqiang is a blessed one? Although it's still early in the pregnancy, it's not far from 10. At that time, Jingwan and the others suspected that Luo Jingying was pregnant on the first time. Everyone else was the same. Therefore, everyone knew what was going on. It's just that Li Hongming was too impatient. Even if he had to wait for another 10 days to half a month. Tyrannical Wang's beloved wife. Chapter 196. Generally speaking, no one would announce the good news before the diagnosis was confirmed, even if the person to announce the good news was the maiden's family. A married lady would inform her maiden's family as soon as she was pregnant in order to reassure them. If it was just an ordinary relationship by marriage, the maiden's family would naturally be happy that their child could have a better foothold in the husband's family. However, if the relationship was related by interest, the baby in the womb would also make this relationship more stable. Because of this, it was necessary to be safe. Therefore, although it was not necessary to wait until 3 months for the baby to be stable, at least the good news had to be confirmed before the good news was announced. Otherwise, because of some special circumstances, as a married lady who needed her maiden's family to help invite a doctor, she would secretly do it through someone she trusted. If the good news was announced early and the result was a mistake, it would be very unpleasant. Obviously, Luo Jingying's situation did not belong to any of the above. Li Hongming had always done things properly, so naturally, he would not make such a mistake. Then, it was certain that Luo Jingying was really pregnant. No doctor could confirm that a woman was pregnant in at most 1 month. Li Hongming dared to send people to the Luo family at this time. First, he knew that the Luo family also knew the truth. Second, he was really anxious and couldn't wait any longer. Luo Jingying had been in his harem for a month, but there was no news from Luo Peishan. Because she was a concubine, her maiden's family could not do anything openly. It was normal for them to secretly find ways to send gifts and inquire about the situation. Out of 10 families, it was estimated that 9 out of 10 families were like this. Under normal circumstances, as the wife, she would turn a blind eye to the concubines with background and would not interfere. However, the Luo family's attitude was as if there was no such person. Li Hongming did not want to ask his princess not to make things difficult for the Luo family, but to ask if anyone from the Luo family had come to the Luo family. Li Hongming had already faintly sensed the real situation from Luo Jingying's attitude at the beginning. However, the reality seemed to be worse than he expected. This was what Li Hongming did not want to see the most. This was no longer a matter of whether his concubine was liked by her maiden's family. To some extent, it was a more direct reflection of the Luo family, or more accurately, Luo Peishan's attitude towards him. If Luo Peishan thought highly of him, as long as he had the slightest intention of assisting him, even if he sent a kitten or a puppy to his residence, he would use this opportunity to get closer to him. However, if it was the opposite, even if Li Hongming schemed against his most beloved granddaughter, he would probably bear the pain and give her up. Because of this kind of anxiety, Li Hongming could not wait to find out that Luo Jingying was pregnant. If it were not for the sake of blocking the public's mouths and preventing them from completely angering the Luo family, he would have already taken action half a month ago when Luo Jingying's pregnancy began to show. His purpose was nothing more than to not give up. He wanted to confirm whether everything was really as he expected. If it was not, it would be for the best, but if it was, I don't know whether she is blessed or not. I only know now that the young lady from our family who was carried into Prince Rui's residence also came to the summer palace. Along the way, plus the few days after arriving, Prince Rui and our master met frequently. Even I have seen Prince Rui once, but I have never heard him mention anything. Madame Luo calmly told the truth, but Nanny Lu's heart was not calm. The Luo family actually did not even know this. Didn't concubining say that she sent someone to inform them? Did she send someone who pretended to comply, or did she not send anyone? Prince Rui did mention this to me, but I forgot, so I did not mention it. Luo Peishan explained. Madame Luo responded indifferently, and then, there was no then. Nanny Lu saw that the Luo family was directly sending her off. They did not prepare to send someone to take a look, nor did they even ask a question, let alone take a look in person. Moreover, from their expressions, she could tell that they were not pretending. They really did not show the slightest bit of concern. Nanny Lu's first impression of Luo Jingying was not bad. However, not long after entering the mansion, Luo Jingying's nature was exposed. Moreover, she was still useful, so Li Hongming could not help but indulge her. Because of this, Luo Jingying was more arrogant than anyone else. Although she still reluctantly kept the rules in front of the princess, Nanny Lu could not tell how angry she was that the princess was above her. Sometimes, her eyes looked as if she wanted to strangle the princess and then take the throne. Nanny Lu naturally looked down on her. However, even if she did not know the details, she knew that Luo Jingying was from the minister's mansion and was of great use to the prince. Moreover, the princess did not say anything, so she naturally could not say anything. However, as time went by, she naturally found that something was wrong. Concubine Ying's status in her family was a little. Moreover, the prince's patience with concubining was wearing thin day by day. At this time, they found out that concubining was pregnant. At first, Nanny Lu was very happy because Li Hongming did not have any children. However, after calculating with her fingers, she knew that concubining was pregnant before she entered the mansion. Although she believed that concubining would not do anything to betray the prince, her pure happiness was still covered with a layer of shadow. However, for the sake of the prince, she was very willing to make a trip to the Luo family. However, the result she got was like a bucket of cold water to her head. How was this not good? It was just one more title than the person who was expelled from the family. Nanny Lu was a little stiff. She braced herself and said, Lord Luo, Madame Luo, concubining is young and this is her first child. It is inevitable that she will be a little scared. If you can let her relatives see her and talk to her, she may feel better. Moreover, concubining really misses you. You see. I'm afraid that this matter has not happened in other families. Only our prince is lenient, Prince Rui is lenient, but we have to abide by the rules. A concubine's family is not even a proper relative. Madame Luo calmly interrupted her. Nanny Lu wanted to slap her own mouth. In her eyes, her prince was the best and the most honorable. As an official, she had to respect him. Whatever he said, she had to follow his will. Therefore, her words, which were originally asking for help, unconsciously became a favor. Madame Luo smoothly rebutted her back. It was really hard to swallow. Madame Luo, you are being modest. You are talking about other families. How can your family be mentioned in the same breath as theirs? Can you say this in front of Elder Lu? Madame Luo's tone was calm, but her words were not polite at all. Nanny Lu was speechless. Her goal was very simple. No matter what their relationship with concubining was, as long as the Luo family went to see her, it would be enough to let outsiders know that the Luo family had entered the prince's place. Obviously, the Luo family really did not give any face and did not care about concubining at all. Naturally, they would not care about what kind of life she would lead without the support of her maternal family. Jingwan came back with some people with noodles. She did not expect that there would be an outsider after her sister-in-law had left. Originally, she wanted to give the noodles to Li Hongyuan in person. However, there were some people who did not want to do it. In the end, she did not do such an unruly thing. Li Hongming naturally saw Jingwan's intention. He did not want her to cook, but he was very willing to pass on such a relatively intimate thing. Naturally, he would not be kind to the person who disturbed the situation. Therefore, he looked at Nanny Lu a little coldly. When he wanted to target someone, his momentum was really terrifying. Nanny Lu's legs trembled and she almost knelt on the ground. Jingwan looked at her from the side. She was not curious, but obviously, it was not suitable to continue, so she squatted and prepared to leave. However, before she could open her mouth. "This must be your Fu's third miss, a truly beautiful person," she smiled at the right moment and looked at Li Hongyuan, "Speaking of which, Prince is really blessed." Then, she clearly felt that the feeling of being targeted weakened a lot. She did not expect that she had gambled correctly. However, Jin Qinhuang's care for the Luo family's third miss was simply shocking. Nanny is overpraising. Jingwan smiled faintly. Because the Luo family's third miss was famous outside, although she had never seen her, but she was very clear about her bearing and self-restraint. Originally, because of the Luo Jingying, she was very suspicious of this point. Now that she saw it, she knew where the problem was. That was a person who tried to paint a tiger but ended up looking like a dog. Because she held back for a while, after collapsing, she gave people an even worse impression. Now that she was compared to the main character, it was simply the difference between the bright moon and the firefly. Her heart was filled with regret. Why was it not this girl who entered her own prince's inner courtyard? A souffle would have been appropriate. Just as Lu Mama was lost in thought, something suddenly flew over. She was startled and hurriedly dodged, but in the end, she was still not lucky enough to escape. Her shoulder was hit and water stains were all over her body. There was also that bone-deep pain. Faced with Li Hongyuan's overflowing hostility, it was as if he wanted to skin her alive. Finally, she could not support herself and knelt on the ground. The teacup just happened to break at her feet. When she knelt, the pain was not only on her shoulder. "Prince, Ben Wang's Wangfei, is it something that Li Hongming dares to covet?" "Prince, you misunderstood. This servant is just noisy." Lu Mama closed her mouth. Don't mention making a sound, she did not dare to breathe loudly. Li Hongyuan picked up his chopsticks and unhurriedly began to eat the noodles. A bowl of noodles, it looked and smelled good. Moreover, since it was something for the prince to eat, it was definitely not just noodles. There were also several side dishes, all of which were crisp and refreshing. The taste was indeed not bad. Li Hongyuan ate calmly. Jingwan also felt that it was inappropriate to leave at this time. His movements were quite fast. He basically finished the entire bowl of noodles and most of the side dishes as well. After he put down his chopsticks and rinsed his mouth, he looked at Jingwan. "Your fourth younger sister is pregnant. Do you want to go and see her?" This prince is just in time to find Li Hongming and ask him how he trains his servants. Fourth younger sister. Jingwan was slightly startled. Then, she glanced at Lu Mama and chuckled. "Everyone in the Luo family knows that this servant and my fourth younger sister are like fire and water. She is now very precious. If this servant goes to see her now, what if something bad happens to her because of anger? I think Prince Rui loves children. If Prince Rui blames me, this servant can't bear the responsibility. In the Luo family, only you 5 masters come out to avoid the summer heat. Needless to say, Lord Luo and your elder brother are here. Madame Luo is her grandmother, and she is now a concubine. Whether in status or seniority, if Madame Luo condescends to see her, I'm afraid her life will be shortened. Speaking of which, only your sister-in-law is barely suitable. My sister-in-law's health has just recovered. How can she go out?" Jingwan flatly rejected. Duchess Ding made such a scene in front of the Luo family's residence that day. There were probably few people in and out of the summer palace who didn't know about it. If you marry me, your status will naturally be very inappropriate. Now you have to be a little wronged. Although she is a concubine and you don't like her, she is still a member of the Luo family and was born in the minister's mansion of the Ministry of Personnel. Even if she is a concubine, she is still more noble than others. There are people everywhere who flatter the powerful and trample on the weak. She represents the Luo family in Prince Rui's mansion. When others trample on her, they will probably feel the pleasure of trampling on the Luo family. Moreover, doesn't Wan Wan want to see her in person? Li Hongyuan gave a shallow smile. Although Jing Wan was a little dizzy from Li Hongyuan's enigmatic smile, she didn't really faint. The meaning behind these words seemed to be helping Luo Jingying, but no matter how she listened, it didn't sound right. Prince Jin occasionally did things that he shouldn't have done. According to Jing Wan's words, it was a violation of his persona. However, these things seemed to be indirectly related to her, and the result was very satisfying. And now, he seemed to be doing the same thing again, with a bit of wilting. Personally meet Luo Jingying and let her tell Prince Rui about Luo Jingying's status in the Luo family. As long as she broke Prince Rui's last bit of fantasy, Luo Jingying's days could be imagined. Thinking about it like this, she seemed a little excited. There was a saying, what was it again? Knowing that she's not good, I'm happy. Seeing with my own eyes that she's not good step by step, wouldn't I be even happier? Well, in fact, Jing Wan wasn't that bored. It was meaningless to pay too much attention to people like Luo Jingying. Li Hongyuan saw the lack of interest on Jing Wan's face. He knew that with Jing Wan's temperament, she never cared about insignificant people. No matter how Luo Jingying bounced around, it didn't affect her. She always knew what she needed and wouldn't lose herself and deviate from the direction. This wasn't wrong, but Jing Wan didn't know that sometimes, small people could also stir up big waves. Although this possibility was very low, the best way was to completely eliminate this possibility. People who hated you, directly trampled to death. Even if for some reason, directly killing them wasn't good, it was better to step on the other party until they didn't have the ability to resist. However, since Wan Wan wasn't interested, it doesn't matter if you don't go. It's indeed not worth caring about. Go, why not go? As long as you're happy. Li Hongyuan seemed to say a little helplessly. This feeling of pampering and indulgence came again. Jing Wan uncomfortably shifted her gaze away. It was fine if it was in private, but in front of so many people, couldn't he restrain himself a little? When they were in the valley, Luo Peishan had seen what kind of virtue Li Hongyuan was, and now he didn't take it seriously. After old Madame Luo was slightly surprised, she also returned to calm, as if she hadn't discovered anything. On the other hand, Lu Mama lowered her head and tried to hide the shock in her eyes. Li Hongyuan once, 7 days of favor, many people only heard about it, but there weren't many opportunities to see it. However, Lu Mama was fortunate enough to see it. How should it be said, Jin Qinhuang's attitude towards those women was only a little better than usual. In her view, there really wasn't any sincerity mixed in, it was purely for fun. Those women were fascinated by him to death after a few days, it was really inconceivable. Now, she truly felt that he treated the Luo family's third young lady differently. If Jin Qinhuang was really sincere, then it was natural that her actions just now would make him unhappy. Since she had made a decision, Jingwan went back to change clothes. Although she could already predict Luo Jingying's future, she was now pregnant, especially when Prince Rui didn't have a son. Jingwan knew her too well. She would definitely be complacent and couldn't help showing off in front of her. In fact, it felt good to tease her when she was bored. Therefore, Jingwan dressed herself up vigorously, using the most gorgeous and comfortable clothes and top head ornaments that matched the value and craftsmanship. Jingwan's last outfit was more luxurious than the clothes that great elder princess prepared for her as an adopted daughter. But because Jingwan could suppress it, it made her more radiant and beautiful. When Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan, he was stunned. He was really obsessed with Jingwan. Jingwan's facial features might not be the most beautiful, but now even the most beautiful woman in the world standing beside her couldn't take away her brilliance. Moreover, her skin was good, and the shape of her eyes was good. They were bright and spirited, which made her look extraordinarily beautiful. Her advantages were magnified again. Very beautiful. Li Hongyuan praised. Sure enough, Wan should look like this now. Madame Luo also nodded with satisfaction. Whether Jingwan was dressed plainly or gorgeously, in her opinion, it was not a problem. Her granddaughter was the best in any case. Jingwan couldn't stand Li Hongyuan's invasive gaze. She looked at Madame Luo with a slight blush and said, "Grandma, can fourth sister's clothes be better than mine in Prince Rui's mansion?" She winked slyly. Madame Luo suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's said that women dress up for the man who loves them. She glanced at Li Hongyuan meaningfully and said, "But do you specially want to compare yourself with others?" "It's not that I want to compete with others, it's that someone wants to compete with me." I don't want to argue with her, but she definitely won't let it go. If her food and clothes are better than mine, she'll definitely brag about it endlessly. That smug look on her face is still not as interesting as her envious and hateful look. I just want to annoy her. You are getting more and more strange. Madame Luo pointed at her from a distance. Didn't you just say that she is precious and can't be annoyed? Jingwan showed a wanton smile. I suddenly remembered that fourth sister's vitality is tenacious. Otherwise, why does she appear energetically every time I think she won't appear again and look for trouble? Madame Luo shook her head and looked like she couldn't do anything about her. Li Hongyuan's heart was itching as if it was being scratched by a kitten's claws. He couldn't wait to pull Jingwan into his arms and ravage her. At the same time, he was burning with jealousy. Wan didn't dress up for him, so he wanted to chop up the person she cared about so much and feed him to the dogs. Li Hongyuan drank the tea and looked at Jingwan with a deeper gaze. It was as if the tea in the cup was actually Jingwan's body and soul. It was incomparably delicious. Therefore, when Jingwan accidentally met Li Hongyuan's gaze, she was a little surprised. Jingwan's eyes wandered and she didn't dare to look at him. She always felt that he wanted to tear her apart and eat her. She wondered if he could really endure until they got married. She inexplicably thought of someone's size and her heart trembled. She was only 14 years old. She would die. She was only a child in junior high school. Why did these ancient people have such a strong taste? How could they eat it? However, when she thought of another person who was one day younger than her and was now pregnant, Jingwan felt more and more uncomfortable. She didn't know what she was thinking, but in the blink of an eye, her expression changed. She was so distracted that she didn't even notice Li Hongyuan walking in front of her. Li Hongyuan laughed in a low voice. Jingwan finally came back to her senses. Seeing the person in front of her, she subconsciously took 2 steps back. When she realized what she was thinking, her face turned red. This reaction made Li Hongyuan even more curious. He wanted to know what she was thinking. It had to be known that Jingwan was not a person who was easily embarrassed, especially when it came to intimate contact. It was easier for him to tease her intentionally or unintentionally. However, in order to prevent her from getting angry from embarrassment, he didn't ask. "Let's go." Jingwan calmed herself down and let the heat on her body fade away. Seeing that he was about to leave and that Nurse Lu was still kneeling in the same place, Jingwan wasn't sure if there was a broken teacup under her knees. Your Highness, she's Prince Rui's servant. Wouldn't it be better for Prince Rui to deal with her? Jingwan, are you pleading for her? Li Hongyuan asked. No, it's just that this is the Luo residence. No matter who made her kneel here, it's not a good thing for the Luo family. Nurse Lu's gaze, which implied that she was appraising the value of goods, not only angered Li Hongyuan, it also made Jingwan unhappy. How could she plead for someone like this? She wasn't her mother. If Jingwan really did plead for mercy, Li Hongyuan wouldn't refuse. However, Jingwan's true nature made him happier. There are always people in this world who think they're infallible. This prince didn't make anyone kneel. Jingwan, you have to remember that no matter how many small fishes and shrimps are killed, there will be more. It's really a waste of energy. It's far better to just directly kill a big fish. It can also solve the problem from the root. Jingwan was startled. Li Hongyuan, this man the living king of hell, was not to be trifled with. Moreover, he was ruthless, intelligent, and shrewd. He also had a perfect face. He was simply a super killing machine. His killing power and scale were simply hard to predict. Li Hongyuan wanted to touch her face, but he restrained himself and softly said, "Don't be afraid." Jingwan had seen the terrifying scene of him killing people. After that, he also said similar words. At this moment, Jingwan truly believed that even if he became the enemy of the world, he wouldn't hurt her. What should she do? This kind of man, even if he had a bad record, seemed to be very easy to move. Once or twice, her heart would beat faster. After a few times, perhaps she would really be moved. At this moment, Jingwan finally realized that her heart couldn't really be protected even if she wanted to. She was a little scared, but also a little expectant. If she didn't try, although she would prevent harm, her life would be as dull as water. When she thought about it in the future, her memory would be blank. After all, the things that really left a memory were often the things that were deeply engraved. For example, she wouldn't remember what she ate a few days ago, but she probably wouldn't forget the first intimate contact with the man in front of her. Then, let it be like this. Let nature take its course. There was no harm in seeing if this man could really move her heart. What harm was there in tasting the joys and sorrows of love? However, Jingwan felt that according to everything that Jin Qinwang was doing now, whether she was moved or not, it was very easy but also very difficult. The biggest obstacle was none other than those women. The past, she could ignore it, but in the future, it would depend on whether he could keep it. It was reasonable to say that a man who was fickle in love with beauty would find it difficult to turn back. But after she entered the capital for a few months, she didn't hear any romantic affairs from him. Perhaps the so-called great favor was just a smokescreen. Jingwan was very clear that this was actually her most solid bottom line. That was the boundary between being moved and being unswervingly loyal. If it was only being moved, then she could completely cut off the threads of affection. If it was being unswervingly loyal, right now, her reason was that if the monarch was heartless, then she would stop. When it really came to that, people were often crazy. If he really gave her too high of an expectation and destroyed it with his own hands, perhaps she would pull him to perish together. However, thinking about this now seemed to be superfluous. From a few days ago, she only thought of treating him as a family member. But now, she was indulging herself. Such a quick change, Jingwan herself didn't expect it. She looked at Li Hongyuan and suddenly laughed. "Wang Ye, you have already won. If this is your purpose, then please continue to work hard. Chenu is looking forward to it." Jin Qinwang's every word and action, to say that there was no purpose, Jingwan didn't believe it. Now, she would just treat it as him pursuing her. Li Hongyuan slightly raised his eyebrows. He seemed to understand something, but also seemed to not understand. But seeing Jingwan's bright smile, he really wanted to kiss her, but there were too many people who were an eyesore. Wang Ye, it's time to go. Li Hongyuan and the masters of the Luo family left. Lu Mama also slowly stood up, but that feeling of fear and trepidation didn't disperse for a long time. They were small fish and shrimp, their masters were naturally the big fish. Slaughtering the big fish was refreshing. What did this mean? Jin Qinhuang was actually the same. Lu Mama staggered and almost lost her footing. There was a prickling pain in her knees, as if her legs were about to be crippled. She smiled bitterly. How long had it been since she was offended like this? He didn't let her kneel. That's right, she couldn't bear it and knelt down. But the other party had such a noble status. If he didn't tell her to get up, would she dare to get up herself? Lu Mama endured the pain and followed as fast as possible. She didn't forget that Jin Qinhuang initially wanted to question her own Wang Ye because of her. She also blamed herself. When she was in Rui Wangfu, she was used to being dignified. It was inevitable that some things that shouldn't be present on a servant's body would appear. Moreover, the places she dealt with all year round were all in the back residence. Even if it was other people who knew her identity, they would still be respectful. For a moment, perhaps she was a little carried away and forgot that there were actually many people who could easily crush her to death. Moreover, it wasn't as difficult as crushing an ant. When facing Jin Qinhuang, she should be even more clear about this point. But if she didn't pay attention, she would make a mistake. To say it was big, it wasn't a big matter. It was just that her eyes were a little presumptuous. But to say it was small, she could lose her life. And Jin Qinhuang's following words, how should she say it to her own Wang Ye? Outside the gate, the Luo family respectfully sent off Li Hongyuan. At the same time, Luo Peishan handed a box to Jin Qinhuang. Li Hongyuan didn't say anything or ask anything and directly received it. Jingwan then boarded the carriage. From beginning to end, no one looked at Lu Mama. The other two servant girls who had been waiting outside the carriage looked at each other in dismay. What happened? Moreover, Jin Qinhuang came out of the Luo family. In front of the two servant girls, Lu Mama naturally wouldn't bow and bend her knees. With an expressionless face, she said, still not leaving. What was in that box? Facing the magnificent heaven stairway, Jingwan naturally prepared to choose the winding road on the side. Li Hongyuan didn't think so. The two horses were the true portrayal of his intentions. Jingwan looked at the horse that she had used on the road. At first, she found it strange that Jin Qinhuang had prepared something for her. When she returned it, he didn't say a word and took it back. She thought that the horse was only lent to her. It turned out that it was waiting for her here. Jingwan didn't refuse. Although Jin Qinhuang was very indulgent towards her, but there were some things that he was very insistent on. In any case, he would probably shoulder everything, so there was really no need to insist on these small things. They could ride horses. If the carriage wanted to go up, they could only take the mountain road on the side. Taking that winding road, if they wanted to reach ahead of the people taking the straight road, they naturally had to be fast. Compared to Li Hongyuan, Jingwan's riding skills could only be considered as a beginner. Therefore, Li Hongyuan was relaxed and comfortable, while Jingwan appeared to be somewhat cautious. However, the horse was docile enough and smart enough. After climbing a section of the stone stairs, Jingwan relaxed a lot. Even so, there was still a bit of jealousy in her eyes when she looked at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan suppressed his speed and followed at the side, chuckling, "In the future, Ben Wang will take you wherever you want to go. I want Wang Yi to teach this subject's daughter how to ride a horse." Good. Even if it was riding a horse, he would naturally hold it in his arms. Teaching by hand was the fastest. The speed was slow enough. When Jingwan and Li Hongyuan arrived at Prince Rui's courtyard, Prince Rui had already received the news and personally led people to wait there. Seeing the two people riding side by side, Li Hongming's expression was somewhat gloomy and unclear. However, Li Hongyuan had already put away his previous gentle attitude. From the looks of it, it seemed that he was only slightly better than when he was facing other people. When Jingwan saw Prince Rui, she immediately understood why Li Hongyuan's attitude was so different before and after. She thought to herself, this is a proper king of acting. He's so good at controlling his emotions. After getting off the horse, Li Hongyuan only lightly greeted third imperial brother and third sister-in-law. Jingwan respectfully greeted them on the side. Li Hongming smiled at Li Hongyuan rather intimately, but only raised his hand slightly to Jingwan, alienating and indifferent. After Nurse Lu said a few simple words to him, he should know how to face Jingwan. Whether it's in the capital or outside, 6th Imperial brother basically doesn't look for me to drink. I'll have your sister-in-law prepare 2 dishes to go with wine. Today, let's have a good drink. Li Hongming originally wanted to pat him on the shoulder, but seemed to think of something and withdrew his hand. 3rd Imperial brother, I think you should know why I'm here. I know. I'm not strict enough. 6th Imperial brother, don't worry. I'll definitely give you a satisfactory explanation. That's the best. Li Hongming nodded with a smile. He tilted his head. Princess, take 3rd Miss Luo to see Madame Luo. As sisters, they should have a lot to talk about. Yes, Your Highness. Madame Lu, Lord Rui's wife, replied. After seeing them off, Madame Lu smiled gently at Jingwan. Concubining often talks about her family. She must be very happy to see her cousin today. Really? Jingwan didn't say much. She didn't believe that Madame Lu didn't know her attitude towards Luo Jingying. Either she was so good at acting that she pretended not to know and didn't show any flaws, or she was fed up with Luo Jingying and was waiting for Jingwan to help her vent her anger. Along the way, Madame Lu seemed to be very intimate with Jingwan, as if she was treating her own sister. Of course, many of the so-called sisters in the backyard of Prince Rui's mansion were biological sisters. In the backyard of Prince Rui's mansion, except for Madame Lu, Luo Jingying's family background should be the noblest. What's more, Prince Rui doted on her a lot, so from the beginning, she was treated only a little worse than a concubine. She had her own yard and a group of servants. When Luo Jingying knew that Jingwan was coming to see her, she was unhappy at first, but then she became strangely excited. Without another word, she hurriedly went back to her room to change her clothes and freshen up. She used to envy Jingwan for having so many good things, but it turned out that she was too shallow. Compared to what she had now, Jingwan's things were nothing. When Jingwan arrived with Madame Lu, she saw that Luo Jingying's smiling face became a little stiff after looking at her. Then her face cracked little by little. Everything was within Jingwan's expectation. Thinking about it, wasn't it fun when you were bored? When they came closer, Luo Jingying just stared at Jingwan as if she wanted to eat Jingwan alive. Madame Lu frowned. It seemed that Nanny Lu was right. They were sisters living under the same roof. Why was there such a big gap between them? However, now she was a member of Prince Rui's mansion. If she was rude, it would be a disgrace to Prince Rui's mansion. Concubining, there was a hint of warning in the voice. Luo Jingying suddenly came to herself. She quickly stopped looking at Madame Lu and bent down to salute. Sure enough, Prince Rui's mansion is good at teaching people. Look at the fourth sister's manners now. This was not a compliment to Prince Rui's mansion. It was to tell Madame Lu that Luo Jingying didn't have any manners and she was in the Luo family. Miss Luo, you must be joking. Everyone says that the Luo family is a family of scholars in etiquette. If there is another bad seedling, it's that seedling's own fault. Every family has a few bad descendants. Jingwan nodded. Your Highness, you're right. Luo Jingying's face turned pale because of Madame Lu and Jingwan's words. However, she didn't dare to lose her temper in front of Madame Lu. In Prince Rui's mansion, she could despise other concubines, but she couldn't be disrespectful to Madame Lu. Prince Rui was a man of rules. Just because she talked back to Madame Lu once, Prince Rui neglected her for several days. So, she didn't dare to make the same mistake again. Your Highness, I haven't seen my third sister for a long time. Can I talk to her alone? Luo Jingying asked with a hint of pleading. Madame Lu didn't answer. Instead, she glanced at Jingwan, obviously asking for her opinion. Jingwan nodded. Your Highness, please grant my wish. Miss Luo, you're too serious. Concubining, Miss Luo is your older sister, and the future princess, you shouldn't neglect her. If she let this one suffer here, it's possible that the King of Hell would blame this on Wang Ye's head. With the Gong Prince as a precedent, she didn't want Wang Yi to suffer the same fate as her maternal family. Because the left governor was the Gong Prince's biggest backer, the King of Hell would make a move on him. During this time, the Gong Prince was like a grandson in front of his father-in-law. Her prince's biggest backer wasn't her maternal family, but his biggest backer had an unusual relationship with the King of Hell. When the time came, her maternal family was the most likely to suffer. Luo Jingying's heart was filled with hatred. Your Highness, you're worrying too much. Before I got married, my relationship with my third sister was the best. Even if I neglect anyone, I won't neglect her. Madame Lu gave her a deep look. I hope so. When it came to understanding Li Hongming, there was probably no one who knew him better than her. On the surface, he seemed to care about his children, but in fact, that wasn't the case. Therefore, the one in Luo Jingying's belly, he wouldn't care much about it. After Madame Lu left, there were only the two sisters left, and there were already people waiting on them. Chapter 197. I also miss third elder sister very much. Luo Jingying gritted her teeth and said. In that case, we sisters really think of the same thing. Speaking of which, you and I were born 2 days after each other, but in fact, we were only separated by a few hours. Tell me, why didn't you reincarnate into my mother's belly? Then we would be twins. In that case, you would be a concubine after entering Prince Rui's mansion. It's really unfair for you to be a concubine. Jingwan said with a sigh. Yes, why didn't she reincarnate into the second branch? That way, everything that Luo Jingwan had since she was a child would belong to her. She wouldn't have to be suppressed by Luo Jingwan all the time, and she still couldn't live a peaceful life. She had already taken out the best things, but she still couldn't compare to Luo Jingwan. She looked at Luo Jingwan's tender appearance and thought about how the items in Rouge Pavilion were already ridiculously expensive to begin with, but they were sold to her at double the price. Needless to say, it was definitely this bitch's doing. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. Ah, fourth younger sister, are you serious? Jingwan chuckled. You're so naive. Although reincarnation is a technical job, if you screw up, no matter how good your reincarnation is, you'll probably be done for. Don't you think so, fourth sister? Luo Jingwan, it's fine if you don't follow the rules at home, but it's too ugly if you still act like this after marriage. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for the child in your belly. When the child is born and knows that he has such an unruly mother, he will be ashamed to see others. Jingwan glanced at Luo Jingying's flat belly and then looked at her undeveloped body. It was a sin. This child was too important for Luo Jingying. It was the foundation of her life. When she gave birth to her eldest son, Prince Rui would ask for the title of concubine for her. At that time, princess consort would be the princess consort. Without a son, she could only hide. Thinking of this, Luo Jingying tried her best to calm her anger. When she looked at Jingwan again, she suddenly laughed and waved the servant girls who were waiting on her to leave. These people understood her temper, so they obediently retreated. However, she couldn't order Jingwan's servants around. They completely ignored her. Jingwan just raised her chin, and Nanny Gong and 2 servant girls left. They were well behaved, and their clothes were not out of place. Third sister is right. This child is as important as my life. Speaking of which, I may be lacking in other aspects, but God is still kind to me. He gave me a child on my first time. But after third sister gets married, I don't know if you'll be so lucky. But it doesn't matter. I'll keep my son's little clothes for you. You have to know that it's only once. So many people beg for it but can't. Jingwan looked at her with a subtle expression. Even now, the world should know that 13 or 14 years old was too young to have a child. Of course, even if the in-laws knew this, they would not make things difficult for their children. Therefore, for a girl who married early, only the mother would tell her and even prepare some medicine. Looking at Luo Jingying, she seemed to be completely unaware of the danger and was very proud of it. Jingwan didn't know that at the beginning, Luo Jingying persuaded her parents with the idea of giving birth to their eldest son. At that time, Madame Lu was still dreaming of restoring her family's glory. She thought that this woman would be in danger whenever she gave birth and that her daughter wouldn't be so unlucky. Later, she realized that Luo Jingying was an ingrate and was too lazy to remind her. Luo Jingying misunderstood Jingwan's gaze as envy and jealousy, so she smiled even more brightly. Third sister, you don't have to be jealous, ha, Jingwan sneered without hiding her sarcasm. She was no longer polite, are you crazy? Jealous of you. Jealous of you. Jealous of your ignorance. With your small body, you haven't even grown up yet. Do you want to have a child? Do you want to die? Luo Jingying, it's sad that you have fallen to this point and don't know anything. What nonsense are you talking about? Luo Jingying glared at Jingwan. If you give birth to a son, it's probably better. Princess Rui doesn't have a son, so she will raise him under her own name. It's hard to say whether she will give him the title of a legitimate son. But if Princess Rui gives birth to a legitimate son, your son, the eldest son, will be an obstacle that must be eradicated. If you give birth to a daughter, your daughter will most likely be worse than your second sister. After all, you, the legitimate daughter, are younger than your second sister. Princess Rui's 2 daughters are much older than your daughter. Don't say that it's impossible. What you can do, others can naturally do. It's just an eye for an eye. Luo Jingwan, don't think that you can fool me like this. The Luo family all say that you have a good heart. You should let them see how vicious and black your heart is. Luo Jingying said fiercely. Jingwan looked at her face and knew that even if she didn't believe her, she was suspicious. His Highness dotes on me and arranges the best for me. Even if I'm still young, nothing will happen to me. Luo Jingying seemed to regain her confidence when she said this. Luo Jingwan, don't play these little tricks with me. I'm just a leftover. A trace of contempt and disdain appeared on her face. Is that so? Then do the people who serve you always tell you what is good for the child? Have they ever told you what is good for you? Do they care about the child or you? If you can tell me one thing about them being considerate of you, I'll admit that I'm playing with numbers. Luo Jingying's face changed again. She seemed to be thinking about it and her face became worse. It was clear that Jingwan was right. After you die, other women will bully your child, spend your money, live in your house, and sleep with your man. Of course, the last one doesn't have to wait for you to die. It will always be like this. Luo Jingwan, Luo Jingwan. Luo Jingying held her stomach and was full of hatred. What, do you not want the child now? But without the child, do you still have any value? What's more, the child of the imperial family can't be harmed even if it's the mother. Otherwise, you will be accused of harming the imperial child. How many heads do you have to bear such a crime? Luo Jingying's lips moved. She wasn't so stupid to lose the child. In her opinion, Prince Rui, who didn't have a son, cared a lot about the child. Now that she was surrounded by people arranged by him, there was no possibility that he would do anything. Although she always believed that Wang Yi really loved her, she subconsciously didn't dare to take the risk. She didn't dare to take the risk of what would happen to her if she didn't have the child. But, harming the imperial child is a serious crime. This is what third sister said. Luo Jingying laughed slyly. Then, she held her stomach and screamed miserably. She kept saying that her stomach hurt and kept saying things like, "Third sister, don't." The servants serving her were not light. As for Jingwan and the people she brought, they were calm and composed. Before coming, Jingwan had already expected that Luo Jingying would cause trouble. Her biggest bargaining chip now was the child in her stomach. Jingwan felt that she had overestimated her. Luo Jingying didn't have much courage and couldn't be ruthless to herself. Luo Jingying held on tightly to the people supporting her. Wang Yi, where is Wang Yi? No matter what, this wasn't a small matter. The servants had to hurriedly inform Wang Yi and Wang Fei. How could Li Hongyuan not know that Prince Rui was alarmed? Jingwan was here. How could he ignore it? Originally, Li Hongming said that Madame Lu would deal with it. He didn't need to care. He believed that Luo Third Miss wasn't that kind of person. It's better to know who's right and who's wrong. If he was vague, there would be plenty of excuses to shirk responsibility. Luo Jingying's voice could be heard from afar. Third Imperial brother, this concubine is full of energy. Prince Rui didn't look good. During this time, Luo Jingying's nature was exposed. He also saw some of her unspeakable words and deeds. He tolerated it and only sent 2 nannies to teach her the rules. However, Luo Jingying acted coquettishly and shamelessly and didn't want to learn. Now, she even pretended to be like this. Perhaps it was a mistake to choose her at that time. Princess Lu arrived first. She saw at a glance that this matter was most likely pretended. Her face couldn't help but turn a little dark. She completely ignored her warning. Li Hongming saw Luo Jingying pitifully reaching out to him as if she was begging for a hug. If there were no outsiders, he wouldn't mind fulfilling her wish. However, with his brother by his side and outsiders present, he only felt embarrassed. Therefore, he completely ignored Luo Jingying. He glanced at Jingwan. Because of their arrival, she had already stood up. She was indifferent and calm, without the slightest bit of panic. With this kind of temperament, she was much better than Luo Jingying. He sighed in his heart, but his face didn't change at all. Looking at Luo Jingying again, he suddenly had an idea. His eyes fell on Luo Jingying's belly. If he beat her at her own game and directly got rid of this child, would he be able to exchange for a chance? It was basically confirmed that Luo Jingying had no status in the Luo family. However, Luo Jingwan was different. She was deeply loved by Madame Luo. If she got into trouble, the Luo family would be very unlikely to not care about her. Li Hongyuan watched coldly from the side. He could tell at a glance what Li Hongming was planning. In his opinion, Li Hongyuan was the one who had been playing around for a long time, treating him as if he didn't exist. Someone, summon the imperial physician. This sentence completely interrupted Li Hongming's thoughts. He turned to look at him. She's just a concubine. Why bother the imperial physician? Just let the Fu doctor take a look. He dispelled his previous idea. He couldn't control Luo Peishan, but provoked this living hell. The gains didn't make up for the losses. If this bastard wanted to mess with him, he had no way to get back at him. Moreover, when he had accepted Luo Jingying as his concubine, outsiders had already guessed that there was something fishy going on, but because there was no real evidence, no one dared to say anything. Now that the imperial physician had been invited to take her pulse, wouldn't everything be exposed? At that time, the Luo family's reputation would be damaged even more. However, the image he had always maintained would also be completely ruined. Third imperial brother still doesn't have an heir, and imperial mother is also anxious. When the concubine was pregnant, the female physician stayed by her side every day. The imperial physician also took her pulse every 3 days. Now, this one's background is much more noble than that one. Third imperial brother, why are you neglecting her? Li Hongming's expression didn't change. Sixth younger brother, you misunderstood. I think it's because I don't have many children. The previous child, perhaps I cared too much about it. I couldn't suppress my good fortune and couldn't save her life. Therefore, it's better for this one to be less important. It has nothing to do with this prince. This imperial physician must be invited. He must let this prince know whether the fetus is really affected or someone is deliberately playing tricks. If it's the former, then it can only be your bad luck, third imperial brother. If it's the latter, then this prince can't help but turn the fake into the real. Li Hongyuan's words were indifferent, but the meaning behind them was frightening. Li Hongming was glad that he dispelled the idea. Otherwise, the one who would suffer in the end would be him. However, Jingwan was surprised by Li Hongyuan's unreasonable tyranny. If you suffer a loss, then it's your own bad luck. If you let him suffer a loss, then he'll return it to you 10 times, 100 times over. However, Prince Rui didn't dare to say anything. Because he kept silent, even if he couldn't retaliate against him, at least there wouldn't be any more disastrous losses. Even if he had no power or influence on the surface, in reality, to some extent, he had more power than the emperor. Moreover, the emperor was absolutely not as free and unfettered as he was. The emperor would be bound by many rules and regulations, but he wouldn't. To be a Wang Ye, to be able to achieve the status of Jin Qin Wang, was probably unprecedented. And when you became the object of such a man's protection, it was actually quite interesting. Sixth younger brother, she's just young and delicate. She wants this prince to take a look at her. Looking at her appearance, it doesn't seem like she's affected by the fetus. Why should sixth younger brother care about this little trick of the inner residence? Let's go, let's continue drinking. Third older brother recently got some good stuff, let's open sixth younger brother's eyes. What was this called, spending money to avoid disaster? Looking at Li Hongyuan's attitude, it was clear that he was accustomed to it. Jingwan also understood that Li Hongyuan's real purpose in having her come was purely to extort Prince Rui's things. The other things were just incidental, it didn't matter whether they could be achieved or not. Wang Ye, may this subject's daughter take her leave first. Speaking of this, because I was born a day earlier than fourth younger sister, I was considered to be a head above fourth younger sister. Fourth younger sister's relationship with this subject's daughter hasn't been harmonious since childhood. She is easily agitated when she sees this subject's daughter. Now that her body is heavy, it's not good for everyone. Moreover, before I left, grandfather and grandmother didn't agree with this subject's daughter coming. In the future, if there's no need to see her. Jingwan seemed to be tactful, but the meaning she wanted to express was very clear. Li Hongming was clearly furious, but he still maintained a perfect smile on his face. Not to mention that Li Hongyuan was present, he couldn't flare up. Even if it was just Jingwan, he still needed to maintain his poise. Third Miss Luo is right. There's no need to force people who don't get along. Wang, yeah, I feel that third Miss Luo is quite congenial. In the future, we will be sisters-in-law. I wonder if I can occasionally invite third Miss Luo to our mansion for a chat. Princess Lu said in a soft voice. I can't make the decision. It depends on whether third Miss Luo is willing.